welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today for this very special edition of Facebook Live with Napa Valley Wine Academy. Really excited about today because we're talking about one of my favorite topics, and that is Franciacorta. And who better to have talk about my favorite subject than one of my favorite people, and that is Gianmario Villa, who's here. He's the official ambassador for the region of Franciacorta. And we're going to have some fun today. We're going to learn a little bit about Franciacorta. We're going to sip a little bit on the wines, and we're going to talk a little bit about the lifestyle that this wonderful beverage inspires. So welcome, Gianmario. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm super excited every time I can join you in particular. I am really happy. I'm really happy to represent a wonderful region of Italy, a wonderful way of celebrating life. Now that everything is reopening, we are seeking for more reason to toast. And also to have a friendly chat about Franciacorta. We don't want to be too technical. We want to just inspire on discovering something new, or learn more about what you might like better, and most importantly, dream through our stories and our personal memories about Franciacorta. By our, I mean both me and Christian.
And you were just in Franciacorta not too long ago, right?
I was there just very recently, actually, a little over 2 weeks ago. I was roaming in the fields of Franciacorta. It's easy to talk about how beautiful are the landscape back in Italy, and France, Spain, the old world is magical, especially after 2 years of being forced to stay in the country. But when I had the chance to go back in the north, and we're going to talk a moment about some geographical aspect of Franciacorta, but I was surrounded by the mountains, by the lake, by the vineyards. People were happy again. Everybody was putting their heart first, literally seeking for reason to connect and to talk about Franciacorta. So it was a very inspiring and very emotional under many different point of views.
I can imagine. I can imagine. Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we get started off? I know you can kind of set the stage. You have a great presentation for us. We'll set the stage of Franciacorta and talk a little bit
Yep.
about it, and then we'll come back. We'll taste through the wines, and we'll have a great discussion around your experiences in the region, as well as
Absolutely.
what foods and pair wonderfully with these wines. So I'm going to go ahead and switch the screen. If you want to share your screen, we
I
will.
think we're right here.
Great. So the floor is
Excellent.
yours. The floor is yours, Gianmario.
Thank you. I add a few new slides and some new content after my trip to Franciacorta, and I was debating if I wanted to change the cover of the presentation. But this image here, even if I know some of our viewers are recurrent viewers and they already attended a couple of our tasting, but I couldn't take this away. And this is extremely meaningful to give you an idea of what is around you when you're in Franciacorta. This is the local regional park of Sebino. You see the mountains, the pre-Alps, and the background with some snow. This is most likely a November photo, or no longer than that. So, and this vineyard surrounding what was back in the days the path of the glacier coming down from north, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. So let's dive into this, starting by some more photos. And it's incredible how you can take a bicycle or ride a horse and go around the vineyards of Franciacorta and get lost into little forest nearby the lake. Always have a sort of a chorus around you. There is not one single element dominating the scene. It's not only about the mountain. It's not only about the lake. It's this beautiful microenvironment characterized by multiple notes that make this fantastic symphony that's in Franciacorta. And a less of a formal slide here. This year we were exclusive partner in the category of sparkling wines with the Emmys, and I had to take this hard job and go for parties and take photos, and most importantly talk about the Franciacorta. We had a blast. There was, like I mentioned before, even among the talents, actors and producers and writers and so forth, an exceptional desire of celebration. Cedric the entertainer was our host, and he started off that way. He said, "We are all here because we want to celebrate." We did plenty of celebration in the house with our own, Zoom parties or so, but this is the season where for the first time we are social again. So it was important for Franciacorta to be there and to be there next to the Emmys and celebrate with what we consider the most elegant way to celebrate from Italy. Now, back to some facts. And Christian, please jump in the conversation anytime if you have any question or you see any question from our viewers. What
Absolutely.
is Franciacorta? Because there are a lot of new people. So let's just rephrase the beginning, giving a few important elements for a minute or two. We are far away from what is the traditional sunny south of Italy with, the beautiful Mediterranean Sea. We are in the deep north. We are in the region of Lombardy, a little eastern of Milan. So the fashion and the design capital of Italy is right there. And you actually have a strong influence from Milan in Franciacorta under different aspects. So we're going to tell in a moment. Lake Iseo. Lake Iseo is maybe the underdogs of the lakes. If you think about the famous Lake of Como or Lake of Garda, Lake Iseo is right in the middle, so a glacier lake, a tiny region. Even compared to the other famous regional sparkling wines around the world, this is just 77 square miles. There are about 19, 20 tiny municipalities. I was driving the car heading east, and after 2 minutes and a half, I enter in a new village with their own peculiarity for the soil and the style of the wine. So in this tiny area, you have an exceptional microclimate, and things change a half a kilometer, a third of a mile away. The surface is a little short of 7,700 acres, but an important information, like I mentioned here in the chart, is about the organic certification. And we're talking about the certification here. I dare finding another area with such a high volume of certified organic wines where the organic approach is typical in the families. These people drink wine first, their own wine, and then they sell it. There is still a boutique artisanal approach to winemaking. Of course, there are the major players making millions of bottles. By the way, there are like 16, 17 million bottles produced per year. So we're not talking about a crazy amount. So having this element of certified organic so present in the daily life of pretty much all the producers is super important, as well as the sustainable approach. Now, Franciacorta, it's pretty easy, my job, because when you name it, you already refer to multiple concepts that are connected to the same area. Franciacorta, what is Franciacorta? It's a wine. Franciacorta is a wine, and in particular, a wine that is strictly metodo classico, so re-fermented in the bottle. So when I'm dealing with different level of questions, since I took on board my position as ambassador of Franciacorta, from the most technical to the most naive and simple. So Franciacorta is its own region. It's an area of Italy. It's a growing area. It's a style of this wine, and it's a wine very much different from the surrounding areas making sparkling wine. So one name to evoke multiple concepts. And I adore this photo with the sunset reflecting on the mountain in front of Monte Isola, which is that tiny island in front, right in the middle of Lake Iseo. It reminds me of how crisp can get there, even in a day of fall. How frankly stunning is the landscape. You just look down and you see vineyard, you look up, you see Alps. It's not an everyday viewing. This is another panoramic view where you can see actually the municipality of Iseo village on like almost in the center, at the end of the lakes, the major center in the district of Franciacorta. The Lake Iseo then running up all the way to the Alps, and as you can see, also diverse altitude of each exposure from east to west. And speaking of altitude and latitude, I'm going to come right here about the geography and the geology. So, as we know, or as we should know, in my opinion, there are three important elements that connected together can define the quality of the viticulture. And it's a combination, it's an interaction between what Mother Nature offers you, how you take advantage in the positive sense of the word of Mother Nature, and what kind of historical tradition you build among the centuries and characterize the area. And this is pretty much common to all of Italy. So let's briefly go through the meteorology, the history, the culture, and geography, just to add some elements to understand better the wine during our tasting, or even when you go shop in your local store and ask for a Franciacorta. In these three photos, I think you can understand pretty easily how being in the deep north, where yes, you have a higher latitude in the Italian peninsula, but also a higher latitude, the weather changes very drastically from very hot all the way to very cold. And now I don't want to step in and compare to, I don't know, Finger Lakes or Washington State. It doesn't get that freezing. But the fact that the snow characterizes every winter, that the sun characterizes every summer, that there is a strong temperature excursion day and night, summer and winter. There are seasons. I'm back in Los Angeles after my Italian trip, and I re-embraced 100 degrees day in Los Angeles, while back home, I know the foliage is almost starting with all that beautiful season that is autumn. So, a complex meteorology, there is a difference of temperature, fluctuation of temperature, and not only that, important also is the function of the lake. When we refer to the lake, we refer to a natural basin of water that attracts the heat during the daytime and releases the heat in the nighttime. And this is happening in all the four seasons, especially in the winter. So it never gets too freezing or too hot. Now, history. I'm a I major in political science and historical parties and mass communication. So for me, it's too easy to talk about history. I'm going to try to be a good boy and just mention a few important facts. But first of all, the etymology, Franciacorta. Nothing to do about Francia, but French, the country. Even if the etymology of the two words, the country and the district here, takes origin from the idea of free courts, areas exempted from taxes. And that's a key point because, thank God, sometimes after the year 1000 or so, in the 11, 1200, Cluniac monks from Burgundy brought their knowledge in Italy, and in particular in Franciacorta. And I like this osmosis in the old world. The Roman brought something to France, then the monks brought something back to Italy. It's an exchange, if you want. I like the idea of free countries circulating. So anyway, the monks obtained a very important factor, exemption from taxes, which is the one in business to grow your business and have a better margin and profit. So that's how everything started. But very early in the history, and this is different from a lot of other areas around the world, we have written documents about winemaking in Franciacorta. And that's important because we can talk about the heritage of a wine district, about, I don't know, wine made during the Roman times or during the early Middle Age, but without any documentation. So we have, for the first time, the word Franciacorta, which is a sort of a dialect, of a distortion of the Italian language in 1277, in the Annals of Brescia, which is the largest town very close by Franciacorta. And from there on, there is a strong production of documentation, such as the one in 1567 of Erbamat grape, which we're going to talk later, an old grape, local grape, very recently reintroduced in production by a local agronomist, Mr. Gallo. And then on the right side, I was visiting the consortio plenty of times during these days in Franciacorta, and the president of consortium, Mr. Brescianini, he goes, make sure when you walk in the consortium, you go check our beautiful book section. And this is a photo of the original book from Girolamo Conforti, where in 1570 was describing the wine of Franciacorta as mordacious wines, meaning fizzy wines. So the background of Franciacorta in terms of production of sparkling wines is really at least from the Renaissance, from the late Renaissance on. Interrupt me if everything comes up. If not, I'm gonna go on. I don't see myself, so it's hard to
Yeah, yeah.
keep track of
Keep going. You're on
everything.
a roll.
All right, sounds good. So a couple of more elements, and I help our viewers with some notes in the chart here. What impressed me is that already in the Napoleonic era, when the Napoleonic army invaded north of Italy, or was also welcomed by the northern Italians to avoid other form of oppression, counted all the vineyards and all the acres already planted with active productions, and this number you see here, a little short on 2,500 acres, correspond to a third of what is today the total amount of acres planted in vineyards. So it's pretty stunning how, a couple of 100 years back, the production was already a thing. And by thing, I mean more professionally, a business and a lifestyle. And also the entity of the production was pretty wide. So 2,500 acres in the 1809 is a pretty rounded good number. Now, more recently, to avoid to get lost in the history, what is the modern concept of Franciacorta? Because we can refer to mordacious wines, to fizzy wines, but technology applied, as we know, up and only from the mid 50s on in terms of attempts. And we have a photo here of Digliani and Berlucchi, which are, if you want, the godfathers of Franciacorta, because they released in 1960 and 61 in particular, 3,000 barrels of the very first Pinot of Franciacorta. I was lucky to see the very last barrel kept secretly in the dungeons of Berlucchi, gated with cameras and everything, to give an idea how important is that year for everybody in the production. And by the way, this is the first year officially produced Barolo Franciacorta as a Pinot di Franciacorta. But before that, there is about a decade of attempts, desperate attempts. I was listening beautiful stories of, barrels stacked up in a corner of the winery that suddenly were exploding and they were losing the majority of the production, or wines that were undrinkable at the beginning. And I wish we will have another chance together to actually talk about the epiphany for Franciacorta and how everything started in the modern days. I collected and recorded some very curious stories. Now, from then on, 3, 4 more details before we go to talk about geology and more. The DOC appellation. Why is it important? We don't want to only refer to numbers just to brag about numbers. It's because in 1967, the Italian legislation defined what is Franciacorta. So there is a law that protects the consumer and also help the producer respecting a system of laws to come out with a barrel. And from that point on, it was only like a quick climb up, the society of the wine world, because they start getting recognitions and medals and so forth. In the 1990, the Consortio was founded. And then actually three very special years. And then I'm done with history. 1992 and 1995. In 1992, for the first time happened something incredible. The viticultural zoning study in Franciacorta, promoted by all the people of the industry, winemakers, journalists, agronomists, enologists, because they wanted to track and record every single piece of land. And thanks to that 3 year study, so detailed, they came out with finally what is today the DOCG of Franciacorta. We can show a bottle later with the pink strip, traditional strip of the DOCG appellation, because from 1995 on, Franciacorta can produce only wine refermented in barrel, metodo classico. And that's a big turning point also for the local business. Now, we're going to talk a moment about geology, and but in a very, very short and informal way. The blue area on top of the picture is the Lake Iseo. Okay, so from the Val Camonica, which is the alpine valley north of the Lake Iseo, a glacier start detached from the Alps and start heading south. And right where the lake ends today, and you see that kind of a yellow shell in the middle where the river still runs, that's where the majority of the deposit happened. So we have this Pine Glacier Lake, the lakes per se of Iseo and Como are of glacier origin, split, deposit morainic soil, very important for the nutriments of the soil and also in particular for the mineral content of the wine. And this is incredible. I want to share another photo. I was visiting Ca del Bosco, an historical producer, and on the left you have a 3D reproduction of every single piece of land planted with Franciacorta grapes. And with the red arrow, you see that sort of an oval shape on the left of the picture. That's where the glacier moved south, hit the left mountain, moved right, hit the other side of the mountain, and then finally slowly came down south, spreading the morainic soil everywhere. And the picture on the right, talking about in between the secondary and the tertiary era, roughly. In the picture on the right, which is actually another 3D map, you can see how this shell, literally this amphitheater as they call, is perfectly shaped with these multiple colors that bring us different tonality in the wine. Speaking of the organic element I mentioned before, these are some of the numbers. And the picture on the right was recently taken in Barone Pizzini property, because even if 1998 doesn't sound that old as a number, it's pretty incredible how in that end of the 90s, officially that this winery was certified organic, and there is a long path before that. It's not just an overnight certification, as you know. There are years of adjusting your methodology of working in the vineyard that leads eventually to the certification. And there is a small story actually I want to share with you about a very practical issue the winemaker had to deal with. So he took over this vineyard with a lot of partners, and he was not new to the wine world, but new to the agricultural part of making wine. And the enologist at the time, the agronomist, pardon me, comes to the owner and he goes, we have an issue. We have a yellow spider issue here. We need to take action. So they found some products and they got rid of the yellow spider. And then after 3 weeks, the red spider came in and he goes, let's get rid of it. And then the green spider came in. So at that point, the owner goes, okay, let's step back and understand what we can do. Because if we keep getting rid of the predator, there will be another predator coming out. And we cannot insist with, chemical solutions. So they started off what was a holistic approach and also a very much respectful approach to the viticulture. Very recently, a scientific study published, it's going to come the name of the magazine to me in a second, scientifically proved that a healthy soil correspond to a better quality grapes that, as we know, should correspond to a better quality wine. And this is extremely banal if you want, but no studies actually scientifically prove that connection. So the approach of this winemaker, and after that several other adopted the same system, was the coexisting different elements in the nature. Because if you allow everybody, and that should be taken in modern politics, perhaps, if you allow every single insect or predator to coexist in the same plot of land, Mother Nature orchestrates in a way that there is not one single predator dominating the others. And that's, I think, it's a very smart move, respecting, then enhancing the local flowers and herbs to feed the soil. So it's a tribute to let it go, Mother Nature. You do your things. We're going to be here just to collect the grapes. Now, moving on, the grapes. What makes a Franciacorta? Actually, it was a very legitimate question. I was at the Emmy and a lot of people were asking, okay, what am I drinking exactly? Franciacorta is defined by 3 grapes in particular. Chardonnay, mostly planted, Pinot Bianco, Pinot Nero, and Erbamat. I'm using the Italian pronunciation because, yes, Pinot Noir came from elsewhere, but was adapted in the local soil. So when a grape is planted from a different area to a new soil and perform vintage after vintage, century after century, that become a different biotype. And that biotype is very similar in the DNA to the original grape, if you want, in Burgundy, but adapted to the local environment, like people. I migrated to US. My daughter was born in California. She's Italian origin, but she's a different biotype, I guess, by now. Allow me to say so. Erbamat literally might mean like crazy grass. And like I said, is a local varietal that existed in there for a long recently is back in production. By law is allowed up to 10% only, but very practically, I went out and I took photos, and I'm going to show you actually the next chart about this. And I inquired about how many people are cultivating Erbamat, and very, very, very few producers. We're talking about I don't know, probably not even 1%, not even 0.5%. I would say it's a dozen of hectares, maybe overall the production. But it's curious how people are. You see on the left photo of Erbamat grape, and on the right a vineyard of Erbamat, how people are persisting. What is good about it and what is less friendly? What is good is about a new varietal indigenous peculiar to Franciacorta brought back to production and now becoming more popular worldwide. I'm a big fan of that. What are the challenges? An incredible high acidity, hard to manage, very hard to manage. For the wine geek listening now, it reminds me of some Erbaluce, if you want, in Piemonte, strong acidity. But and also has a very late maturation, so over like 4 or 5 weeks after Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. Especially these days, everything is anticipated. The harvest is happening in mid-August, basically. So good news for the production. In the same time, a lot of work, a lot of work in the vineyard in particular, and then back in the winery to manage that acidity. Some other photos. We can see some typical soil with the pebbles and the chalk, the partial sand soil, a little bit of clay. We're gonna go back maybe in the geology map, but what I want to say is never one sole characteristic of soil defined by that area. It's always it's a mosaic. If you focus out, if you zoom out, the color might appear the same, but when you zoom in, you have many different undertones. So this, like I said, the sand element, the chalk, the clay, the pebbles, all together gives the complexity. Picture of Pinot Noir on the top, vineyard of Pinot Bianco on the bottom. Now, I don't know if you want to take a quick break, go over something else. I just want to show you sorry, let me go back quickly to a map, this one here, because I want to mention a couple of description to the map. The green element that you see in particular in that amphitheater, central amphitheater, it dominates in the descriptors of the olfactory of the wine as a floral note. So wherever you see green, you have a lot of floral aspect. And when we talk about floral, we talk about white, gentle flower, never like a super bright presence or so. The yellow, very dominant in that central shell, is more about spice and vegetal complexity. So we have a combination. And by spice, I don't refer to the use of oak, vanilla or so, but a natural element of spice. And lastly, we see like some little dots of orange, especially on the deep far right and on the far left. That's where you have the powerful nose of some Franciacorta. So how to interpret this element? I would say start drinking more Franciacorta, start doing some homeworks, turn the bottle, see where the winery is located, track the label back, see what vineyard makes that blend. If it's a blend of different vineyards, maybe a single vineyard, and go and justify what you smell, what is also the geology map. It's incredible. I know it might sound very, very, I don't know, too technical or too cheeky, but it's incredible how what we call a flower note or a cream or pastry or so actually is justified by either the winemaking system or just the soil. I invite everybody to, roll up the sleeve and go in the soil, stick your finger in the soil, take it out, smell it, see how it's composed, dig a little bit because the roots go down 5-6 feet and more. So try to understand that portion of the winemaking because it's really interesting to me. Franciacorta categories. I'm gonna go on if I don't hear anything or anybody. What is a Franciacorta? What makes a Franciacorta Franciacorta? I mentioned the grapes. I was also surprised by how little Pinot Noir is in Franciacorta. Really, it's less than 10%. I think it's 7 or 8%. I hope I'm telling the right number, but I was touched by that because when I see now a rosé made 100% of Pinot Noir, like the one we're trying today, I have even more respect for the winery. So, and a first year Franciacorta, I was using entry level, never used it before. The first year Franciacorta is aged a minimum of 18 months. And I noticed by tasting, I think I had like about 40 wines per day for a week, that the average of the producer actually bumped that number to 24 and over. So 18 is just the minimum. Now, the Satin Franciacorta, which is a new category or fairly new, introduced later respect the others, is a wine characterized by a more tactile sensation, a rounder, softer, creamier entrance. Also, the name Satin is like seta, silk, together with frost, that is like the evocative word, and characterized also by less atmosphere, only the use of white varietal, Chardonnay and Pinot Bianco, no use of Erbamat. Why? Erbamat is too acidic. It's going to deprive by creamy texture the Satin, and also Pinot Bianco just up to 50%. And there is a wonderful story, we can talk about that, but everything started around the early 1990s, 92, 93, 94, when that zonology study happened. Also, a panel of tasters and winemakers and journalists got together because the new style was happening. The word Satin came out only later, but they start launching a new product and they wanted to redefine that product. And I want to actually share something. Christian, let me know if you can see this. This is my lucky penny. And are you able to see it in the camera? I don't know if you can see that. I'm going to share some photo. This is a Roman Sestertio with the god, the Janus god, the god with two faces. But my point is, even if a human life is very short, considering the age of Mother Earth, we can still make something that lasts for longer than us. I recently learned from some recent stories about how people, you have sometimes a short life, even if you live like 80 or 90 years old, it's shorter than, Mother Nature. How can you live your step? How can you make a difference? You can make a difference by introducing a new wine, introducing a new legislation, creating a coin that can last for, 2,000 years. Humankind, despite our own limit, DNA and genetical limit, we can still create something amazing that lasts for generations. And Satin is going to be one of those. Going forward, and then I think it's time to taste some wine. How is a Franciacorta Rosé? Well, minimum 35% Pinot Noir. It's not dominant because the lack of Pinot Noir around, even if a lot of new vines planted in the past 3 to 4 years are mostly Pinot Noir. And that would be a good element to reanalyze in a few years from now. Minimum 24 months from the tirage. And today we have, actually I'm going to show you the bottle now. Pardon my arm here. We have this wonderful bottle. I normally don't promote the producer per se. Can you see it? This is, you see the shape of this bottle is squared. This is not only vanity. This is actually the fruit of 10 years of research and 2 university degrees spent on analyzing how the yeast in the bottle can perform better and what kind of shape can allow a better fermentation for, this is a minimum of 36 months of aging. Anyway, back to our vintage and reserve, and then we're going to stop for a tasting. A vintage Franciacorta, where the vintage is spelled in the label. It's minimum 30 months. all the degrees of style of sugar level are accepted. And then finally, a Franciacorta Riserva, it's a minimum of 60 months. And today, we're tasting as a very first wine an extra brut, just 1 gram per liter left in the residual sugar, with 108 months of aging. So it's a wonderful, stellar wine. I'm glad to share with you. Before we talk about food, I will probably step back and taste the wine together. How do you feel about that?
I know I feel good about it. Um,
Should I exit from the screen sharing
yes,
or
why
should I
don't
just
you?
leave?
Yeah, go
Let
ahead
me
and
let me let me exit from the screen sharing. I want to see your face. Okay, here we are. I'm gonna leave the picture of the vineyard for a moment. Our first wine. I'm gonna actually. I decided to introduce. Here we go. To introduce. This is a Faccoli Lorenzo. This is an extra brut. Like I said, it's a 10 years old reserve from the tirage, basically. And I noticed that the majority of the producer in Franciacorta are going for less and less sugar, which is also an element of distinction between Franciacorta and other sparkling wines out there. Italians are famous for eating, not only the Italians, of course, but I came to the conclusion that they want to eat the calories and instead drink their wine. I'm using also a beautiful Franciacorta branded glass in crystal tulip shape, which is perfect to both enhance the chain of bubbles and in the same time also help the molecules of the wine breaking up and coming to the nose. The flute is beautiful, but not that effective in terms of olfactory aromas. Other glasses are just not to take in consideration. Speaking of glass, since in the past a lot of people ask about these glasses, the first viewer that in a comment can tell me what is the minimum age for a Riserva Franciacorta, how many months, and I'm gonna be good also. If you don't remember that, the alternative is tell me what is the minimum age for a regular Franciacorta first year. If you answer correctly, we're gonna ship home, as long as you're in California, we're gonna ship home a set of 6 glasses in crystal and a nice bucket blended Franciacorta. I feel generous today. Life is beautiful.
Ec- Excellent. Well, boom, we have someone. Hopefully, Luis lives in California. But go ahead if you have different amount of months than Luis is putting in there. Go ahead and
Yeah,
pop it into the comments section.
let's keep it open. Write some comments. Also, please interact. I read all the comments afterwards. So, what's your first impression about Franciacorta? How did you discover it? A suggestion about how can this wine can be better understood. Like we are here to talk, and your audience is my audience. So, really happy to interact on that.
Well, let's talk
This
about this
extra,
wine. Let's talk
yeah,
about this
exactly.
wine.
I have this wine, and I haven't had lunch yet, so I'm going to be really hungry after tasting and talking about food pairing. This wine, first of all, is a blend. Its majority is Chardonnay. It's actually 60-20-20. Chardonnay, Pinot Blanc, and Pinot Noir. So a decent amount of Pinot Noir. It's 108 months on the lease. And I always check the degorgement in the back of the bottle. So, do your works, turn on the label, check. I think this here, the degorgement, which was the second semester of 2019. So we now have a decent amount of time, 1 year later, the degorgement, because the foam will be more silky and more respectful. Now, time to actually pungent as an extra brut, very bright acidity, growing second after second of you. But you have a beautiful orchestra of different scent, typical of the fermentation in one hand and typical of the varietal. I always say, pay attention to the primary aromas, the aromas typical of the grape, because that's how recognize the genuinity of a wine, like how much is connected and uh, specular to the DNA. And in this case, we have nice lemon zest, Meyer lemon zest, a touch of yellow apple from the primary aromas, and also the dry fruits. My dry fruits, I learned that in Italy and in the US are something different, but that nutty, cashewy scent, typical also of the varietal. And then, of course, the brioche, the creaminess, the yeast coming from the fermentation. So primary aromas and typical of the varietal, and secondary aromas typical of the fermentation, are really important when you taste a sparkling wine. And the more I talk, the more I get salivation going on. So I need some fat to pair with extra. But actually, yesterday I had to take a rehearsal, okay? So I opened some bottle and I ordered tacos because let's talk about food for a moment.
Yeah.
We're not always nearby a lake in Italy where we can have a smoked sardine or some lake fish or so forth. It's beautiful to be there and experience how the local drink their wine, what kind of food are paired. And if you can take a ferry from Iseo and go up to Monte Isola, walk around, smell the lake, and see these fishes floating and then finding in a plate, it's all magical. But we're in Los Angeles, we're in New York City, we're in Chicago, we are elsewhere. What do we do? So I yesterday ordered in one of my favorite spots 3 tacos, steak, fish, and chicken, and something else just to complete my task. And I noticed how, for instance, the rosé performed very well with the steak, how the extra brut performed very well with the chicken. There was some salsa. How the fish was actually great with the brut. So let's leave behind the traditional food pairing. Let's experiment by concordance or by contrast, of course. It's easy to call I don't know, maybe for an extra brut, a tagliatelle with fish lake, or, vegetable couscous instead. So let's experiment, because I can tell you what is correct properly to pair with this wine, but eventually it's what are you cooking home? How are you enjoying wine? What kind of conversation you're having? So eventually, tasting wine is always a personal interpretation. It's like watching a movie or listening to a song. We agree on how good was the movie, or on how inspiring is that tune in the song, but then how you interpret the notes is different in mine, probably. And with wine, I like to believe there is that difference.
That's great. So why don't you drop, if you're watching this, drop some comments into the comment section of what you would pair with Franciacorta, especially this extra brut, which, as Gianmario said, just wonderful complexity, such crispness. It is almost as diverse as the landscape of Franciacorta itself and Lake Iseo, right? So
Absolutely.
many.
Diversity is a big element, is a value. Don't limit the diversity. We're tasting a brut now. I'm going to lift it up. This brut, it's from the Maison Berlucchi, 61 Brut Nature, which is in theory one of the easiest way to drink, not because the wine is easy, because the wine is playful and all around player. So Brut expand the category of the food pairing. And are you celebrating something special? It's that time. Are you celebrating nothing? That's the time. Are you waiting someone at the bar? Perfect timing. Are you having a plate of fried calamari? That's a great timing. Are you ordering, I don't know, vegetarian lasagna with mushroom and bechamel, a white sauce? That's a great pairing. So I like how complex and diversified is the your pairing. And we have a different expression respect the extra brut and the 10 years of aging. This is a wine with 24 months on the list. The gorge also in 2019, so about 1 year. More on the floral, gentle fruit, yeasty, crust of bread, brioche. So more gentle. I don't want to say shy, more gentle in the nose. And I was talking to a friend very recently, he's a chef, and we don't have to taste important wines, explosive wines, powerful wines all the time, because life is not made of 24 hours, 7 days in a row of important moments. So it's important, allow me to say that, to have wines that allow a conversation with a friend, to have wines that allow to have an easy approach and an easier drinking, because life is made of also of simple moments. Now, I notice we are running a dash behind maybe, so I'm going to go to the third wine. This
So this
is,
one, while you're pouring the third wine, the second one had
yeah,
much more of a creamy texture, and like you said, a little bit more delicate than the first wine. Just
yes.
a wonderful juxtaposition to the first wine.
And you know why our impression is for a creamier and softer wine, and is a brut, by the way, the residual sugar higher than the previous extra brut. Now, yes, this is a beautiful bottle from Fergettina. Laura Gatti is a stellar producer. I also visited very recently, and actually they explained the story behind the bottle. I thought it was marketing, pure marketing, and there is actually a scientific study behind the idea of how the yeast are re-fermenting in the bottle. This is an exceptional rosé because, as I mentioned, Pinot Noir overall in Franciacorta, if I'm correct, is less than 10%, 7-8% of total. And this is 100% Pinot Noir. You see a beautiful, delicate color, almost Provençal as a color, you see. The bubbles are, I know it's an awful word, bubbles. The perlage is very fine, small and persistent and numerous. I always like to relate to that, and to the smaller the better, okay, in this case. And this is a wine, like I said, for 100% Pinot Noir, over 48 months on the lease, and we have it's about 36 to 48 months on the lease. Only 3 to 4 grams per liter of residual sugar. And I learned. So actually, I'm gonna. Normally, people ask me about champagne. Okay, when we talk about Franciacorta, I'm gonna anticipate the question. And I was a bit frustrated because we are in Franciacorta, we're not in Champagne. But when you go out, there are a lot of wrong words applied to the drinking. Like you sit at the bar and ask for a champagne, and they serve you a cava, or a prosecco, or a Franciacorta, whatever. So first of all, please, Napa Valley Wine Academy, keep doing this fantastic education program that you're running to educate people, because if you think properly, you talk properly. Okay, so if you have the vocabulary and the knowledge, you're able to interact better, to communicate better, and you spread the word. So I was visiting all these producers, and I'm like, let me ask you something. I have a glass of Franciacorta right here. Why this is a Franciacorta and not a Champagne? What makes it so Franciacorta? And everybody gave me a similar but different answer, with the exception of one common element: sugar. Franciacorta is from northern Italy, is dealing with cold climate, yes, but is still coming from Italy. The weather is nicer. You have excursional temperature, hotter days. There is room for ripeness. The sugar comes from the ripeness, right? In Champagne, don't take me wrong what I'm saying, fantastic product and a lot of mediocrity, like everywhere else in the world. But sugar is missing for geographical reason. Not all the maison, not all the production. I'm talking generically. People don't get angry, okay? But I'm saying that the sugar added at the end of the process, instead of the sugar present naturally in the wine, is one of the most important differences between Franciacorta and Champagne. And I'm glad that despite every winemaker gave their own twist and contribution, they all agreed about this part of the sugar. And I'm writing an article about it, provocatory article.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, very well said. And that's often the questions people ask is, okay, why, how is it different? And I think you outlined that quite spectacular. I mean, these wines are just absolutely beautiful, and they really do remind me of the landscape. I know you were just recently in Franciacorta. Uh,
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about the atmosphere now that COVID is in reduction. Let's say
Yes.
in Italy. What's it like on the ground in Franciacorta?
First of all, I was extremely lucky. I was there, and they got ready a wonderful tour de force every day, meeting directly with the owners, meeting directly with the enologists, meeting directly with the president or director of consortio. The team of Franciacorta back home, and by the way, franciacorta.net is the way to go. If you have a question, you can email me, you can reach out to the Napa Valley Wine Academy, or go straight to the website. The team of Franciacorta, Francesca, Alessandra, Marta, Sara, they are terrific workers, and they put together a wonderful opportunity for me to get to know better the area. An area that you can tell how people are excited to come back and work. And by work, I mean also being social, because being social in Italy is pretty big work. um, Getting to meet, take you by hand in the winery, in the vineyard. So there was an excitement, an exceptional availability by everyone. It's like, after a long night, you wake up with energy and ready to rock that day. And that was the feeling in Franciacorta. Unfortunately, a corner of Italy really hit. But, we got to see the silver lining here. A lot of businesses had a change of generation. And a lot of businesses, it was very Darwinist, the period we're leaving behind just now. A lot of businesses had to take strong decisions. I'm not talking about a style. I'm talking about what grapes I'm going to plant and for what, who I want to cater my product, what's the market I want to talk to. So I noticed a busy town, a busy district. And Milan is right there, don't forget, is the industry capital of Italy, it's the fashion capital, the design capital, where the money comes from often, where the money came in the 70s with the idea of living a better life and then reproducing that entrepreneur attitude into the winemaking. So I found a wonderful area. Boy, what dinners and lunch I had, and I had a lot of walks. I missed the horse ride because but I did the bicycle one. I like the opportunity of being connected with the nature and a walk in the vineyards. I saw a lot of people walking their dogs around the vineyards. That was their backyard. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also, of course, Lake Iseo. Actually, I want to spend one last word on this, and then I'm gonna be done with this comment. Uh, Franciacorta wants to establish a bridge with the other side of the world, with the US in particular, in general, with the world. But the wine is a vehicle to get to know an area. The wine is a vehicle to appreciate life and also to share life with someone else. The idea is to take people into Lake Iseo. People are familiar with Lake Como. Lake Iseo is just beautiful as if not more, and it's like right there. So we are talking to people who wants to visit. Are you planning to go back to Italy, you Christian, or people are watching right now after 2 years of getting stuck here, or maybe going to Arizona? Reach out. We have a wonderful team that can set you up because we care about the experience. It's all about that. You have a good experience, you go back with beautiful memories, you want to repeat the experience. How? Cooking similar food, drinking similar wine, and telling stories over and over.
That's great. I was just going to ask you. You read my mind. It is one thing to enjoy the wine from a region. It's another thing to enjoy the wine from the region in the region and really get a sense of the culture. Because I think this is one of
Yep.
those wines that is culture in a bottle. But once you've visited the region, you have a whole new appreciation for it. I do want to shout out real quick a couple of the food pairing comments that came out because I think these are such amazing food friendly wines, and
Yes.
and so we have uh, maybe one that's a little bit more obvious is pasta carbonara is one. We have fried chicken, Korean fried chicken, which I think that would be an amazing pairing is Korean fried chicken
I
with
just had Korean Thanksgiving 2 days ago on Sunday, or what was on Sunday. It was my first one. I loved it. I
yeah.
relate to that choice.
And then we have mixed mushroom cream sauce fettuccine, another great one. Uh, yeah, so a lot of ideas. I mean, I recommend. Oftentimes people drink sparkling wines and think of them only as celebration wines. The
Yeah.
food friendliness of these wines is absolutely amazing, and it's such a fun thing to do is play around with Franciacorta and different recipes or different food pairings. So I encourage you to talk about.
Absolutely. Quick two comments on that. Yes, fried food because we have the acidity and the bubbles. Yes, creamy dishes for a very similar reason. Even if we have the mi-sec category in Franciacorta, it's all about making brut and extra brut, basically, with less sugar. Watch out for the spice because spicy food, as well as too cold or too hot, are the traditional unpairable situation because you're gonna have your mouth burning. You can't really detect anything. Your senses are interrupted in that moment. So, but a mild spice is absolutely part of the game, and I like how they went for this, Korean twist. And not only experiment with the food of the world. I can tell you beef cheeks with green sauce, but maybe that beef chicken with green sauce is made in Lombardy, in California, and in China in three similar but different ways, and the wine still work. So please get a bottle, go talk to your local store. I'm a big fan of that. Local businesses, not only, but go visit your local business. There is more of a sort of a human approach. Ask for a couple of ideas, grab a few bottles of Franciacorta, go home and experiment from dim sum to traditional lasagna to a vegetarian burger. Go crazy.
Yeah. Well, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to take these three bottles and I'm going to watch Ted Lasso, the last three episodes that I've missed because a big Emmy Award winner, right? And
Oh
and
yes,
hopefully,
yes.
uh, Jason Sudeikis celebrated with Franciacorta. Thanks so much, Gianmario, for sharing your knowledge of the region, your passion. Again, I could listen to you all day describe the wines of Franciacorta. I get
Don't do
thirsty and
that
I want to
mistake.
grab a uh, bottle right away. So would love to have your feedback down in the comment. Hopefully we can
Thank
have
you.
Gianmario back to talk to us more about Franciacorta in the future. In the meantime, I second what you just said is go to your wine shop, ask for Franciacorta, and try the breadth not only of styles but producers that this region has to offer.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
Thank you for hosting. I owe you a beautiful Pinot Franciacorta to you and your team. You're going to be looking
Excellent,
sharp in your jacket.
excellent.
Thank you again for hosting. I would like to toast with Franciacorta to all of you for a beautiful end of the year, really, and for whatever restart everybody is facing or dealing with, because we all need a huge dose of happiness, and a glass like this would definitely help on that.
Excellent. If you want to know more about Gianmario's journey in the wine business, make sure and check out our podcast, The Stories Behind Wine, available on Spotify and Apple iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. So check out that. And then also on our website, we have more webinars with Gianmario about Franciacorta. So in the meantime, stay safe. Cheers. And we'll see you again on
Cheers.
Facebook Live soon.
Franciacorta.net for more information, or my social media name and last name, Gianmario Dilla with two M's. Thank you again and see you very soon on this.
Cheers.
Cheers.